The courtroom buzzed with a silence, so thick it felt like a living thing, pressing down on every soul in the room. Flickering fluorescent lights cast jagged shadows across the oak-paneled walls, their hum a faint, maddening pulse. Rows of spectators sat shoulder to shoulder, reporters scribbling notes, military officers in crisp uniforms, civilians with wide eyes, all holding their breath. At the center of it all sat Daniel Carver, his wheelchair creaking faintly as he shifted. His hands, scarred and trembling, rested on the armrests. His face was weathered, etched with lines from battles fought overseas, but his eyes, storm gray and piercing, burned with a fire that refused to die. Beside him, pressed close to his side, lay Titan, a German shepherd with a coat of midnight black and tan. The dog's ears twitched, his amber eyes scanning the room, every muscle coiled like a spring. Daniel's gaze drifted to Titan, and his chest tightened. 8 years. 8 years of dust-choked deserts, of gunfire splitting the night, of Titan's steady presence pulling him back from the edge. The dog wasn't just a companion. He was a lifeline, a guardian who dragged Daniel from a burning Humvee, who'd sniffed out bombs no one else could see. Now they wanted to take him away. The thought clawed at Daniel's throat, a bitter mix of rage and grief. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot, jolting the room to attention. Judge Margaret Henshaw peered over her glasses, her face a mask of stern authority. This hearing is to determine the reassignment of military working dog Titan, designation MWD 472, to active duty under new handler protocols, she said, her voice cutting through the stillness. Mr. Carver, you've been given notice. The Department of Defense has deemed Titan fit for service. Do you have anything to add? Daniel's hands clenched into fists. His voice, rough as gravel, trembled as he spoke. Fit for service? He's served. He's bled. He's saved lives, mine included. You don't get to rip him away from me because some suit in D.C. says he's still useful. His words cracked with fury, but beneath them lay a raw, desperate plea. Titan shifted, pressing his muzzle against Daniel's leg, a low whine escaping his throat. The judge's lips thinned. The government's position is clear. Titan is an asset.
He's not an asset.
Daniel snapped, his voice rising. He's my family. The room erupted in murmurs, a ripple of unease spreading through the crowd. A young officer in the front row shifted nervously, his fingers tapping against his knee. Another, older, with a chest full of medals, stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Then came the sound, a sharp, guttural growl from Titan. The dog's head snapped up, ears pinned back, eyes locked on the courtroom doors. Daniel froze, his pulse hammering. He knew that sound. It wasn't anger. It was warning. Titan easy, he muttered, but the dog's hackles rose, his body tensing as if ready to lunge. The door swung open with a groan, and a stranger stepped inside. He was tall, wiry, dressed in a dark coat that seemed to swallow the light. His face was sharp, unreadable, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a weathered cap. Whispers chased him as he strode forward, boots clicking against the tile. The officer stiffened. The judge's gavel hovered midair. "Identify yourself," Henshaw demanded, her voice edged with suspicion. The stranger stopped, tilting his head. "Name's unimportant," he said, his voice low, cryptic. "What matters is what's coming." He glanced at Titan, then at Daniel, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Smart dog. Knows more than you do." "What the hell's that supposed to mean?" Daniel growled, but before the stranger could answer, Titan lunged to his feet, barking furiously. The sound split the air, sharp and primal, sending the room into chaos. Spectators flinched, Officers reached for their sidearms. Daniel's hand shot out, gripping Titan's collar, but his eyes followed the dog's stare to the back wall, where a faint, rhythmic tapping echoed. The lights flickered harder, buzzing like a swarm of bees. Then, a deafening crack. A panel in the wall burst open, and two figures in tactical gear spilled out, faces masked, weapons drawn. "Nobody move," one shouted, his voice muffled but commanding. The crowd screamed, chairs toppling as people ducked for cover. The officers drew their guns, shouting orders, but the masked intruders trained their barrels on Daniel and Titan. "Give us the dog," the second figure barked, stepping closer.
Now!
Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He wheeled himself forward, shielding Titan with his body. "You'll have to kill me first," he snarled, his voice shaking but unyielding. Titan growled beside him, teeth bared, ready to strike. The stranger moved then, swift, silent, like a shadow. He slipped behind the intruders, a blade flashing in his hand. In one fluid motion, he disarmed the first, slamming him to the ground. The second spun, firing a wild shot that shattered a window, glass raining down like jagged tears. The courtroom dissolved into pandemonium, screams, barked commands, the clatter of boots. "Enough!" Judge Henshaw's voice thundered, her gavel slamming down. "Officers, secure this room." But her words were drowned out as the stranger locked eyes with Daniel, his expression unreadable. "They're not here for the dog," he said, his tone chilling. "They're here for what he knows." Daniel's breath caught. "What he knows," he echoed, but the stranger didn't answer. The masked intruder on the floor groaned, reaching for a fallen radio, its static crackling with garbled words. Target acquired. Extraction failed. The officers swarmed, cuffing the intruders, but Daniel barely noticed. His mind raced, replaying the stranger's words, Titan's warning growl, the chaos unfolding around him. What did Titan know? What had they seen, buried in the haze of war, that someone would kill to keep hidden? The stranger slipped toward the doors, unnoticed in the fray. "Wait," Daniel called, but he was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Titan pressed against him, trembling but steadfast, his amber eyes locked on Daniel's. The courtroom lights buzzed faintly, the air thick with unanswered questions. Officers shouted. The judge demanded order, but Daniel heard none of it. All he felt was the weight of Titan's loyalty and the sinking dread that this fight was far from over. The air in the courtroom remained heavy, thick with the smell of dust and shattered glass. The flickering lights had slowed even further, as if groaning from exhaustion. Officers were still trying to regain control of the room. The clank of handcuffs, shouts, and the sound of intruders being dragged away echoed through the air. But for Daniel Carver, the world seemed to have stopped. His eyes were fixed on Titan, who pressed close to his side, his breathing rapid yet steady. There was something in the dog's amber eyes, a deep, unspoken understanding that pierced Daniel's chest. They're here for what he knows. The stranger's words reverberated in his mind over and over. Daniel's hand moved to Titan's head, his fingers sinking into the dog's thick fur. "What do you know, buddy?" he murmured softly, his voice trembling. Titan lifted his head, his gaze shifting from Daniel to a dark corner of the room where the shadows deepened. "Mr. Carver." Judge Henshaw's sharp voice startled him. She had risen from her bench, her face hardened with anger and concern. What was that spectacle? And who was that man? Her eyes darted to the spot where the stranger had vanished, but now there was only emptiness. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his voice laced with fatigue and anger. "But they came for Titan, and I won't let that happen." He edged his wheelchair forward slightly, Titan moving alongside him. every motion radiating loyalty. A young officer, his face plainly etched with nervousness, approached. "Sir, we need to get you and the dog to a safe location. It's not secure here anymore." His gaze fell to the radio lying on the floor, still buzzing with static. Daniel caught the fear hidden in the officer's voice, but his attention was elsewhere. He looked at the radio and bent to pick it up. Amid the static, garbled words emerged. Code red. Operation Shadow. Target still active. "What is this?" Daniel asked the officer, his voice carrying a cold edge. The officer averted his eyes, his hands trembling slightly. "I don't know, sir. It's above my level." "Don't lie," Daniel growled, his eyes narrowing. "This is about Titan, isn't it? Why do they want him?" But before the officer could respond, Titan growled again, a deep, dangerous sound that sank into the bones. His eyes were fixed on the door where the intruders had emerged. Daniel followed his gaze, and his heart seemed to stop. A faint glint shone from the broken wall panel, something metallic, hidden in the darkness. Daniel wheeled himself toward it, Titan walking ahead of him. As they drew closer, Titan began sniffing the floor, his movements quick and alert. Then he started pawing at something. Daniel looked down, and his breath caught. Beneath the floor was a small box, black, sleek, with a strange symbol etched on it, a triangle encircling a spiral. "What is this?" Daniel muttered, his hand reaching for the box. But just as his fingers were about to touch it, Titan barked sharply, stopping him. There was a warning in the dog's eyes, and Daniel pulled back. At that moment, the sound of heavy footsteps came from outside, boots thudding, weapons clinking. "They're coming back," Daniel whispered, his eyes on Titan. He quickly tucked the box into his jacket and turned his wheelchair back. "We need to get out of here." But before he could act, the door swung open again, revealing a new figure. It was a woman, tall, stern, her uniform bearing no name or rank. Her eyes were cold as ice, and her voice held a calmness that felt menacing. "Mr. Carver," she said, her tone flat yet threatening, "you have something that belongs to us, and you will give it to us now." Daniel's hand tightened on Titan's collar. "You'll get nothing from me," he said, his voice burning with defiance. Titan growled, his muscles tensing, ready to strike. The woman tilted her head slightly, as if she'd expected this response. Then she snapped her fingers, and shadows emerged from around the room. Soldiers, armed, their eyes locked on Daniel and Titan. "You have two choices," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Either you hand it over easily, or we take it from you." Her gaze shifted to Titan, and a faint smile curled her lips. "And I think your dog knows what comes next." Daniel's heart pounded. He glanced at Titan, whose eyes were still fixed on the box hidden in his jacket. He realized this wasn't just about saving Titan. It was something bigger, something buried in their past. And now, they were closer to a truth no one wanted revealed. The room fell silent, save for the soldiers' breathing and Titan's low growl echoing faintly. Daniel took a deep breath, his fists clenching. "Fine," he said, his voice steady but dangerous. "Come and take it if you can." The woman's smile faded, and she nodded. The soldiers advanced, weapons raised. Titan took his stance, teeth bared, and Daniel readied his wheelchair. There was no turning back. This was their last stand, and they would fight it together. In shambles, a graveyard of splintered wood and fractured glass, the air still buzzing with the echo of chaos. Daniel Carver's wheelchair creaked as he gripped its armrests, his storm gray eyes locked on the woman before him. Her icy stare bore into him, unyielding, as the soldiers fanned out around her, their boots grinding glass into the floor. Titan stood firm at Daniel's side, his growl a low rumble, amber eyes darting between the advancing figures, every muscle poised for battle. "You don't understand what you're holding," the woman said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade, calm yet laced with a venomous edge. She took a step closer, her shadow stretching across the debris. "That box isn't just a trinket, it's a key. And you're too stubborn to see the lock it opens." Daniel's jaw tightened, his hand instinctively brushing the jacket where the sleek black box lay hidden. "A key to what?" he demanded, his voice rough with defiance. "More lies? More blood? I've seen enough of both," and Titan's paid his share. The woman's lips twitched, a flicker of something amusement, perhaps, crossing her cold features. "You think this is about him?" She tilted her head toward Titan. "He's just the witness. What he saw, what he remembers, that's what they're afraid of. And you're the fool who won't let go." Titan's growl deepened, his ears flattening as he bared his teeth. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. Memories flashed, blurred images of a desert night, the crack of explosions, Titan's frantic barking amid screams. Something buried in that haze, something he'd forced himself to forget. "What did he see?" he asked, quieter now, his voice trembling not with fear but with dawning realization. She smirked, stepping closer still, her boots crunching glass. "You were there, Carver. Operation Shadow. A village reduced to ash, orders no one was supposed to survive. Titan found the evidence, marked it, guarded it. That's why they want him silenced." Her eyes flicked to the soldiers. "And you're in the way." Before Daniel could respond, a sharp crackle split the air. The radio, still clutched in his hand, flared to life again. "Secure the asset, eliminate resistance." The words were distorted but unmistakable. His grip tightened, knuckles whitening. "Evidence of what?" he roared, slamming the radio against his wheelchair. "Tell me." The woman's smirk vanished, replaced by a steely glare. "A massacre," she said flatly. "One your government buried deep. And that box? It's the proof, coordinates, names, recordings. Hand it over, and maybe you walk away." Daniel's breath caught, his mind racing. Titan pressed closer, a low whine escaping his throat as if sensing the weight of her words. "You think I'd trade him for that?" he spat, his voice rising with fury. "He's not some pawn in your game. He's my brother." The soldiers raised their weapons in unison, barrels glinting under the flickering lights. The woman sighed, almost theatrical. "Then you've chosen the hard way." She snapped her fingers again, and the room erupted. Two soldiers lunged forward, aiming for Titan. But Titan was faster. With a snarl, he leaped, slamming into the nearest soldier and sending him crashing into a bench. Daniel yanked a fallen pistol from the floor, his hands shaking but steady enough to fire. A shot rang out, and the second soldier staggered, clutching his leg. Chaos swallowed the room, shouts, gunfire, the splintering of wood as Titan fought like a storm unleashed. The woman stepped back, her calm fracturing as she barked orders. "Secure the box."
Now.
But Daniel wheeled himself forward, shielding Titan, his eyes blazing. "You'll have to go through me," he growled, pistol raised, voice a vow. In the flickering light, amid the smoke and debris, Daniel and Titan stood as one, a veteran and his guardian, bound by scars and secrets, facing an enemy that underestimated their will. The soldiers hesitated, the woman's glare faltered, and the radio crackled once more. Back up inbound, the fight was far from over, and the truth was closer than ever.